In the 5th century BC, the most brilliant civilization the world had ever seen was rising in Athens, the birthplace of democracy, the streets where Socrates walked, the city where humanity learned to think. But those same streets would soon become home to death itself. In 430 BC, Athens was the New York of its time, with a population exceeding 300,000, the heart of Mediterranean trade, a meeting point for sailors, philosophers, and artists, all led by Pericles, the undisputed leader and military strategist who made a fateful decision when war with Sparta became inevitable. Everyone outside the walls must come inside. Abandon your homes and fields. We will not fight Sparta in the open. You will be safe behind the walls. It seemed like a brilliant plan, using naval power to wear down Sparta's invincible land army, while the walls protected them and the port of Piraeus kept supplies flowing. But Pericles had not accounted for what happens when you try to fit 300,000 people into a city built for 40,000. There was no clean water. The sewage system collapsed. People slept in temple courtyards, at the base of walls, even in cemeteries. The hot summer sun scorched this sea of humanity, and the city awaited an invisible guest that arrived on a grain ship from Egypt, its true cargo unseen. At first, no one noticed when a few sailors in the port fell ill with fever and headaches. They said it was just the summer heat. It would pass, but it did not pass. And within days, the port district fell silent as people stopped leaving their homes. Then the disease crept inside the walls, and they realized this was no ordinary sickness. They were facing a monster. Thucydides wrote down everything he witnessed, creating one of history's most terrifying descriptions of disease. First, the eyes turned red and began to burn as if fire was rising from within. Then the throat and tongue became so inflamed that breathing turned to torture, and the smell from their mouths was unbearable, the smell of a rotting body that had not yet died. Then came unstoppable coughing that tore people apart from the inside. Then the skin erupted in red spots, blisters, and ulcers, and the patients burned with such fever that some ran naked into the streets, throwing themselves into wells and fountains, screaming that they were burning inside. But even cold water could not extinguish this fire, and then either death came or something worse. As survivors lost their fingers and toes, some went blind, and some lost their minds, unable to remember who they were or recognize their loved ones. The doctors of Athens did everything they could at first, spending hours at patients' bedsides with healing herbs, poultices, and prayers. But the problem was that doctors were closest to the patients, and they died the most. The experienced physicians of Athens perished in the first wave, and those who remained fled, abandoning their patients, their families, and their oaths, because they faced death with every patient they touched and no treatment worked. People rushed to the temples, begging Asclepius, Apollo, and Zeus to save them, asking what they had done wrong and why they were being punished. But the gods did not answer. All the prayers, prophecies, and supplications proved useless, and eventually people stopped bothering. They stopped believing in the gods because no prayer worked, and even the most devout were dying. Without gods and without doctors, the laws collapsed. People no longer feared punishment because they knew they would die before facing any consequences. When the rich died before the poor looted their homes, saying they would die tomorrow anyway, so they might as well live today. There was not even enough wood for funeral pyres. So people seized pyres prepared by other families and threw their own dead onto strangers' fires. Every night, hundreds of bodies burned, and the city smelled of charred flesh. People abandoned shame and honor. No one tried to be virtuous because death equalized everyone, rich or poor, good or evil. Then Athens' most powerful man fell ill, Pericles, the invincible strategist who had ordered everyone behind the walls. First watched his sons Pericles and Xanthippus sicken and die despite the efforts of Athens' best doctors, and he wept publicly for the first time. Then weeks later the disease claimed him too, and in 429 BC Pericles died, leaving behind a leaderless city, a losing war, and an unanswered question about where this curse had come from. The Athenians rushed to Delphi to ask Apollo's oracle why this plague had come and why the gods were punishing them. And the oracle's answer was chilling. If you fight Sparta, Sparta will win, because Apollo stands with Sparta. And indeed, the disease struck only the Athenians while Spartan soldiers remained healthy even as they ravaged Attica. which the ancient Greeks explained as Apollo's invisible arrows punishing his enemies, though some whispered that the Spartans had poisoned the wells, the ancient world's biological warfare theory. Though we now know the real reason was probably simple. Sparta had no overcrowding, clean water, and no mass of humanity trapped within walls. But at the time, it looked like a curse. The plague devoured souls before bodies as families abandoned each other. Mothers fled from sick children. Sons locked sick fathers inside and left. People walked past dying men in the streets without looking or stopping, afraid that touching them or coming close would spread the curse to them. And when there was no one left to bury the dead, people threw bodies into temples, wells, and random pits, turning sacred places into graveyards, which archaeologists confirmed in 1994 when they discovered a mass grave in the Kerameikos district of Athens containing more than 150 skeletons from the same period, all thrown together hastily with no proper funeral rites, no gravestones, no respect, just bodies dumped in a pit. The plague lasted 4 years, coming in 3 great waves, killing between 75,000 and 100,000 people, a quarter to a third of the population. A third of the army was gone. There were no sailors to man the ships, and no soldiers to hold weapons. And there was no leader because no one could fill Pericles' place. So Athens stumbled in the middle of the war. In 404 BC, the Peloponnesian War ended, and Athens lost. The Spartans demolished Athens' proud walls while playing flutes. The fleet was surrendered, democracy was suspended, and the 30 tyrants took its place, the cradle of democracy bowing to dictatorship. And historians have asked for centuries what would have happened if the plague had never struck, if Pericles had lived, if the Athenian army had been at full strength, if the people's morale had not been broken. Perhaps Athens would have won the war, perhaps democracy would have spread earlier, perhaps we would live in a different world today, but we cannot know because an invisible enemy changed the course of history. 2,500 years later, we still do not know what this disease was. For centuries, people guessed typhus, smallpox, some kind of plague, or a hemorrhagic fever like Ebola. And in 2006, Greek scientists analyzed DNA from teeth extracted from the mass grave and concluded it was typhoid fever caused by Salmonella typhi bacteria. But not everyone is convinced because some symptoms Thucydides described do not match typhoid. Perhaps multiple diseases attacked simultaneously. Perhaps it was a pathogen that no longer exists. And the truth is, we may never know the definitive answer, which makes the subject even more terrifying. In 2020, the world was shaken by a pandemic and people did the same things they did 2,500 years ago. Panic, conspiracy theories, heroism and treachery side by side. And Thucydides had written centuries ago that he was documenting this disease so that if it ever returned, people would recognize it. What destroyed Athens was not Sparta's sword, but an invisible enemy, and history loves to repeat itself. So the question remains, is the modern world ready for the next plague of Athens?